Get started. Thank you all for joining and welcome to our first webinar in what we hope will be an exciting new series with new topics being presented every week. Firstly and foremostly, I would really like to introduce myself and my co-directors. My name is Kaylin Smilik, and I'm an early childhood director, development and behavioral consultant. I have a background in teaching and behavioral therapy with a keen interest in providing the best support that we can for parents, teachers, and early childhood providers. Alongside me today are my co-directors, Erin Valente and Jessica Berryman, also early childhood development and behavioral consultants. And all three of us are super happy that you're all here today. And we all share a very cohesive view on empowering parents and educators to feel as though they can work successfully with their child or children. So each week we'll take a turn to present on new topics, and we really hope you join us. So a few tips for the webinar in general is that at the end, we're going to do a 5-minute Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions bar on the right-hand side. No worries if it's a little bit confusing. We're still trying to learn a little bit of software too. So I will also unmute you at the end because everyone's muted right now, and then I can answer some of the questions, and Jess will hop on as well and answer some questions too. Thanks. Right, before we start, the Hatchlings team wanted to be clear that we can't offer an opinion on whether you should or should not send your child back to school. The best place to find this information would be to go directly to the school. It's important that you voice your concerns to them if you feel it is becoming too much of a worry. Teachers are amazing people. I once was a teacher too, and they are essentially in the same position, and they're working extremely hard right now to make everything work for the return to nursery and to schools. And I'm sure they will appreciate all of your honesty. So today we'll be providing you with some helpful strategies to get your child or children up and ready for their return to school. We want everyone to remember that it's all about reintroducing the general familiarity of the school setting and preempting the worry that may come along with going back into an environment that, though familiar, will have changed quite dramatically in the past few weeks, as well as in the coming weeks. As every nursery and school is handling the return a little bit differently, and there's different protocols, of course, following government guidelines, we must ensure that we're always keeping children safe and providing them with the best understanding we can give them. So here today, we're going to provide 6 helpful tips for the return back to nursery or school. Tip 1 is reading a social story and creating one about the return to school. Our tip 2 is making a phone call with a fellow peer. Our tip 3 is creating a visual schedule for your child. Tip 4 is to take a walk past the school or nursery. Our tip 5 is to prepare children for any PPE teachers might be wearing. And tip 6 is to validate your child's feelings. And I'm going to go through all of the tips right now. So first of all, tip 1 was to read a social story. A social story is a customizable, individualized story that helps children to better understand situations. It explains what might happen, how things might be different, and helps your child understand that everything will be okay. You can make it personal, and it can be super fun with pictures of perhaps the child in a uniform, if they wear a uniform to go to school or to nursery, and maybe at the gates, if you do a walk by, you could take a fun photo and put it into the story. And it will also help your child visualize the day ahead of time. Of course, not everyone has the time to do this, though. We are very understanding that it's a busy time for many parents, for many teachers, and educators at the moment, so it won't be applicable to everyone. We plan to send out an example for you to use after the webinar has finished and after you complete our 4 questions short survey. We would be very grateful. We also have a blank copy with just text if you would like to personalize it. If you just let us know, we can email that to you. Tip 2, we think it would be really helpful to make a phone call with a fellow peer. For many children, seeing a familiar face will jot their memory of the nursery or school. We suggest that you set up a phone call between your child and a peer in their class. It would be fantastic if this could be a peer that they are grouped with in their bubble, if you were able to gain this information from your nursery or school. We have a really great suggestion that Jess, Erin, and I have all used, and it's an iPhone and Android app called Caribou. And you can video and call another child. They can read a story together. They can listen to a story read by someone else, or they can do an activity together. Just a short we suggest probably a short 10 to 15 minute call is just enough for you and your child to make a connection. Tip 3, creating a visual schedule could be really helpful, and it can help a child remember what's going to happen in the day and spark some ideas about thinking about schedules and routines and timetables for school. As many children will be facing another change in routine, using a visual schedule can help readjust and readapt to their new schedule. It's helpful to post this somewhere visible for them to see. And for more information on how to create a visual schedule, as you can see in the picture, we have a video on our YouTube site that we've created for how to create a visual schedule and then how to use the visual schedule. It'd be helpful for you to speak with your school about how the schedule or timetable may look so that you can recreate this at home for your child and maybe talk it through with them. Of course, this is subject to if nurseries and schools are happy to give out this information, as I know they're very busy at the moment too. Another option would be just to create a more generalized approach for the day, including waking up, brushing hair, brushing teeth, eating breakfast, getting ready for school, walking to school. Yes. Our tip 4 is to take a walk by the nursery or school. It might be helpful to take a walk by the nursery or school in the coming days. Before the walk, you can read the social story that we will send and discuss parts of it. You can talk about the commute that might have changed due to the circumstances. And you can discuss what teachers the child will be with, what children the child will be in a bubble with, and approach any concerns your child might have. As we know, some teachers will be subject to certain groups. I think that might be quite helpful if a child is wondering why certain teachers they're not seeing as often, or they're not able to see that teacher, or even children. I'm sure some children might not always be grouped in what their friendship groups were before, so it might look a little bit different. So it's good for them to just have a little bit of a chat about that. And of course, get advice from your nursery and your school about that. Tip 5, prepare your child for any PPE that teachers might be wearing. Some nurseries and schools have announced that they will be wearing aprons, gloves, and face masks while children are in school. For a child, this could be confusing and unexpected. A good way to go about explaining this is to look online with your child at some photos of people wearing these types of protective equipment and talk about it when you're out and about to see if others are wearing masks and gloves. Of course, this is very different upon different nurseries and schools. We've had a few people say that their nurseries have said this will work and that's what they're going to do for their staff, but others are following different guidelines. So it's just subject to each school and each nursery. Once again, consult your nursery and school to ask about that. And our final tip is to validate your child's feelings. I think it's been a pretty turbulent time for not just parents, it's for teachers, for early educators, for everyone. So I think there's a lot of things, and children are really struck by not having the socialization and being quite young, and they're used to being around their friends. So there might be a lot of anxieties going around with children at the moment. So it's best to make sure that you're recognizing how your child is feeling. Take time to sit down with your child before the nursery opens or the schools reopen. Perhaps your nursery or school has provided a little bit of support with that as well. Books are always a fantastic way to talk about feelings. We have lots of books we recommend. So if you are keen on a few suggestions on some books, we're happy to send that list as well. And checking in daily can be really helpful for your child and seeing how they're feeling. Just here down on the right-hand side, we wrote just a little bit of an example of something that we could say to our children or to your child. I understand it will be a change and you might be feeling anxious, worried, excited. It's okay to feel this way. We can practice playing together if you'd like. So there's lots of different ways that you can practice your emotions through play and talking through reading books. And these are all fantastic ways to make sure your child's feelings are really being validated. Finally, and I think we have Kirsty on today, but we wanted to mention Kirsty at Relax Kids, who's doing fantastic things and might have some really great insights as well. Kirsty is a Relax Kids coach. She visits schools and helps kids use relaxation techniques and mindfulness to manage their emotional health and well-being. You can find Kirsty on Facebook, Relax Kids with Kirsty, for further advice or information how these tools may also help. So, perfect. Great. So we are going to have questions, if anyone has any at all. Just a quick questions. Feel free to type them in the group. I think Jess might join us as well. And don't worry if there aren't any questions too. Hello.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
So, well, and also I was going to mention too, just quickly, while I wait for a few questions, we have a survey, which I mentioned earlier. Just a quick 4-question survey. We would really be very grateful if you could fill that out. Just gives us a good idea on, how things went, how you liked it, and things that we can work on in the future. And then after that, within the next 24 hours, we will send you all a social story pertaining to going back to nursery or school. And last thing, but not least too, we have a survey. We have a webinar next week on understanding behavior, which Jess will be leading. And we will have a link on our Facebook page tomorrow and another flyer to be sent out. So.
Apparently we've covered all of the questions appropriately.
Yes, apparently so.
I think, yeah, Kaylin, you really nailed it in terms of that. We just need to refamiliarize children with what's happening, but also waiting to hear from your nursery as well, going in and having that conversation with them. What will it look like? Are the children in bubbles? Will they be wearing PPE and all of that sort of thing? It's really just collecting all of that information before we share with our kids. That way we kind of, we're ready for the questions that they might ask, and the adults really get to be the leader in the situation and provide that security, with upheaval after upheaval in the current climate, allowing, having all that information first before we introduce the idea of going back to school, I think is really important to help give our kids that kind of stability.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I agree.
So we have a question here now. What should I do if my child goes back to school, and at the end of the first day, we come home and we have a bit of a meltdown. What could I do to support my child through this situation?
Go ahead, Justin.
You can take the lead here.
Go for it.
So firstly is just sitting down and having a chat about the day, recognizing that, it's going to be really overwhelming for our children on the first day back. So if that means we need some chill out time when we come home, if that means a little bit of extra iPad time or TV time or reading more books or having a little bit of alone time, whatever it does your child does to decompress, that would be a really helpful way. So giving children, recognizing it's going to be a really overwhelming situation, and that it's okay if your child does come home and they are a little bit overwhelmed. It's our job to be there to support them. So giving them the space and the time to decompress, going in and being gentle, not forcing them to talk and recount the whole day step by step. As well as adults, we're going to be really curious about what they got up to and how it was. But our children are probably going to need a little bit more space than we would like to give them initially to really decompress from that situation. So that would definitely be one of my top tips, is making sure you have some quiet time after your first kind of couple of days back and just really gently kind of easing into the whole situation.
Yeah.
Kaylin?
I think picking and choosing demands and things like that is always a great way of taking it too. So it's giving them a little bit more time to just be. There's a lot of change going on. They've already had one change and now there's another change, and just trying to put things together. For a lot of the younger children, it will be, some of them might be restarting that whole nursery cycle. So it's kind of leaving mommy and daddy and going into nursery and not knowing, at that age, they're still readjusting to those changes. So for those going in, it might be a little bit of adjustment, as well as for the teachers in general. I mean, I think, we have a few teachers on here today, and I think they've worked extremely hard to make everything work. And they've already done a lot, because a lot of them have been in schools for the past few weeks, but also, making adjustments for the weeks to come, and to kind of restart kind of a little bit of a new period for these children.
Brilliant. And I think also that kind of cycles back to some of that emotional work that we particularly enjoy doing. So reading lots of books about feelings, and we can, if you send us an email, we can definitely send you through a really good list. But, listening to and acknowledging, that it might be, and introducing a new vocabulary as well. So they might not understand what overwhelmed is, but now's an opportunity to introduce that sort of, okay, how are you feeling? It's really busy, isn't it? Or like, I didn't get to see my friends, or I can't touch my friends, and that sort of thing. So acknowledging that it's difficult and giving them a vocabulary to help express themselves, because I don't think any child's got the vocabulary for what's going on at the moment. So it's, as an adult, we can help kind of model all of that for them.
Right, definitely. We have another question. Do you have any ideas for the night before and getting them to bed, as my sleep schedule is out of the window at the moment? Very good question.
Good question.
I think, I think that's a little bit of a routine thing, right? We can use quite a few calming techniques. We can set a little bit of a schedule from the beginning. Perhaps that visual schedule would help a little bit. And maybe it's, I'm all about creating calming environments for the beginning of bedtimes. I think sleep at the moment for parents, let alone children, has been thrown out the window. So if we could try to use some of those techniques of, calming, reading books before bed, kind of talking it through, setting up the schedule for the next day so they're aware of what's going to happen, and kind of ease that anxiety and the stress that comes along with those. It could also be thinking about, giving your child a bath and setting those routines earlier than they have been before, because I think now I'm sure with some schedules also they've been thrown up with nap times and whatnot as well. So children are up later or going to bed earlier, later, or waking up earlier. So trying to get ahead of that in the coming days before school starts is, I think, going to be quite key.
Yeah, and this is a great one that I was talking with parents actually today in a consult, and our game plan is to be moving things back by half an hour each day. So at the moment they had a 10 o'clock bedtime, and so the plan is in the lead up to school, we're going to go for 9:30 to 9, so let's stick there, then 9 o'clock, and just taking it easy. If you're currently going to bed really late, that's not a problem. Just take it kind of day by day. Don't go from 10 o'clock to 7 p.m. It's setting everybody up for some pretty big emotions, which we don't need to be introducing at this time. So just moving it back slowly, half an hour a day, easing your child into the new routine, adding one more element of their old routine back into, you know, the bath time bubbles before we go to sleep. Okay, now we've got the boat. And so just slowly bringing yourself back to where you are. But don't torture yourselves by going from 0 to 100. If you're at a 10 o'clock bedtime, that's totally fine. Just take the next kind of week or two to slowly push yourself back into where you want to be.
Definitely. I think we had another question too. Do you think it would be wise to wait with going back to school?
This is a really common question that we're getting at the moment. It's such a hard one. It's really, every child gets something different from the learning environment, and it really depends on each child. So we can't really make a broad sweeping statement here, unfortunately. Some children really need the socialization and they can't get it anywhere else, and so school really provides that kind of outlet, and that's fantastic. Some children really need the support and structure and routine of a school environment, and that school is really helpful in that regard. For other children, taking into account maybe that there is only 6 weeks left in the term, or in England in anyway where we are, so children will be going back for 6 weeks, and for some of our kids that we work with it took 3 or 4 weeks to get settled into this routine, and then we'll be doing 6 weeks at school, and then, you know, the 8 weeks of the summer holiday. That's also a factor that you need to take into consideration, is that, so it's really up to each child. Some children adapt to new routines like that, and other children take a really long time, and I think that that's kind of a big factor parents and carers need to be thinking about, is that going back to school, if it's going to disrupt your whole schedule for 3 weeks now, and then in 6 weeks it's going to disrupt you for another 3 weeks, and you've got a good situation going at home, then there might be kind of more validity to maybe staying at home if you feel like you're coping well and your child's being well supported. But if you want to talk to us individually, you can shoot us an email and we can make time for a call to have a chat about your individual circumstances. But at the end of the day, always talk to your nursery as well about your concerns, but that's definitely one thing we're encouraging people to at least think about.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. It is definitely dependent on each family's circumstances, I think, and also, you know, what works best for the child.
Brilliant.
But great. I think that's a question.
Oh, brilliant.
We are very grateful for you joining us all tonight. And if you, as we said, please email us if you would like the blank social story. If you'd like to adapt it to your child, please email us for any other information or any questions you have, emotional books, if you want recommendations. And you could visit us at Hatchlings London, our website, our YouTube channel, and our Facebook. So, and join us next week. So Jess is presenting on behavior. It'll be really interesting.
Understanding what drives your child's behavior is what we'll be covering next week. And once we understand our behavior, how we can better support our children through kind of more challenging times.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much.